The Notre Dame Fighting Irish add wide receiver commitment number 3 in as many days.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Notre Dame is on a recruiting roll. They have 3 commitments from different wide receivers in as many days. We're going to break those down, why it's so impactful for Notre Dame in changing their offense under Mike Denbrock. Of course, they've got Minchie and Carr still battling for the starting gig. I think it'll end up being Carr, but do not count out Minchie. And you also have the scenario where Notre Dame's perception as a program's changed coming off the college football playoff. All of that will be the beginning. In the middle, we're going to talk about lineman recruiting. It's a microcosm of how you not only win at Notre Dame, but how you make college football playoff runs on offense and defense in the trenches is the biggest deal for most teams because they don't have enough guys, maybe enough high-end players. Notre Dame does a great job, and we're going to explain why they're trending in the right direction to go to another level as well. And finally, do the Notre Dame Fighting Irish have a chance at the number 1 class? Everything would have to fall right, but they are in contention. I'm going to tell you what needs to take place for that to happen. So let's start off with the latest commitment, Brayden Robinson, 5'8", 160 pounds out of Red Oak, Texas, just outside of Dallas. Slot receiver that is an absolute burner. Young man has the ability to score anytime he touches the football. Kick returner, punt returner, athlete, and somebody that despite his size is pretty darn strong. I'm just going to go ahead and say this now because this is a pet peeve as a football fan in general. When an elite player is standing back there for a punt, don't kick it right to him. Brayden Robinson fits that profile. Don't do it. Don't do it. He's that guy. You want to get YouTubed, kick him the ball, especially if you kick him a line drive. Give him that extra half step so the first guy that comes at him has more than 5 yards between him and Brayden. Good luck. That's the kind of player they're getting. And quite frankly, Notre Dame doesn't normally get those kinds of players, at least not recently. Obviously, they've had guys in the past, Allen Rossum, Clint Johnson, Rocket Ismail, different guys from the 90s, and Julius Jones, etc., that they've had that were really good return men. But there's still something different about that slot receiver that's just really twitchy, and Brayden Robinson brings that to the field. As a scouting point, this is really unusual. The only time that I can remember seeing him play was about 3 years ago, and I didn't know who he was. It was 7-on-7. He was playing for a very good team, and I asked one of my buddies that was there with me scouting, I said, who's that guy? He's really fast. He said, oh, that's Brayden Robinson. I said, okay, what's the deal? I never heard of him. Like, where's he going? He said, oh, he's only going into 9th grade. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. So that made big difference right there. I was like, that totally changes the deal. And he was playing with kids that were 3-4 years older than him, and he was as good as anybody on the field in that scenario. Now, I know 7-on-7 is different, but if you do not get hands on him, he is a nightmare. Jet sweeps, screens, bombs, anything that you do with him, you better be ready technically, and you better have the coverage right, because if he hits the seam, you can strike up the band. That's the kind of player that he is, and he's electric in any way, shape, or form. So other teams, even if Brayden is on the field and does not get the football, is a threat. He changes what you do. Combined with Bubba Frazier, the other slot receiver committed in Notre Dame, and overall they got 5 receivers now in that class, and 25 overall. It's a really speedy and athletic group. Yesterday they got Devin Fitzgerald, and in my opinion, it's probably the most unique of the 3 commitments they got this weekend, because not only is he Larry Fitzgerald's son, of course, Larry's going to be a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players of all time. I think he's second in the National Football League's history history in yardage, this is a kid that has that big-bodied frame. He's 6'2", 205. Notre Dame has not recruited the boundary wide receiver position at a consistent year-to-year basis. They just haven't. And it's one of the reasons they stunk last year at passing the football on and off. Like, they were just inconsistent from the start of the year to the end. And when they got hot, they got hot. But when they were cold, man, they were Antarctica. If you don't have a boundary receiver that other teams respect, that can be part of the problem. If you have guys out there that are inconsistent, which Notre Dame certainly did last year, you get exposed, and they were sometimes. They overcame it with Jeremiah Love and obviously an incredible offensive line and running game, but it's still a lot easier to win games when other teams fear your receiver group across the board. So could Fitzgerald be that guy? Possibly. I don't know if he's going to be as good as his dad. Obviously, I kind of doubt that. But is Devin somebody that has the ability to break tackles? Is he powerful? Does he have great hands and all that? Yes. He's got a long way to go with his routes. He curves off some things. He does little things wrong that you expect out of a high school kid. That's totally normal. But he plays at Brophy Prep in the Phoenix area. It's a great school, and it's a program that has sent kids to Notre Dame before, and it's sent kids all over the country, in Alabama, USC. Everybody recruits there. So I think he will be ready mentally. And, of course, again, his dad's in his life. His dad's always around to help him. He will be a little more mature and ready than most kids probably to take on Notre Dame. That's a big challenge. Notre Dame, especially off the field for a freshman, for most kids coming in to play football is difficult. That's hard for a kid that's just going there to be a student. Now you add the life of football, the fans, the coaches, the weight room and all that. Devin won't have that problem. The reason I say he's unique, though, among this three, and I'll talk about Kaydon Finley in a second, is the following. He still looks like he's growing into his body to me, and it's changing. I don't know how big he's going to get. It's the one thing that we never really know. Like Brayden Robinson was maybe 5'6", 5'7" when I saw him 3 years ago. He got a couple inches bigger, but we didn't know if he was going to be 6 foot or if he was going to be 5'8" like he is. You just don't know. If he can add just a little more muscle, keep his speed, obviously the technique will come. Devin Fitzgerald, the way he has improved from last year to now, and he continues to grow. Coach Brown at Notre Dame, he's a really good receiver coach. They've got a chance to have a multi-year starter at the boundary. Those guys are hard to find. Clemson wanted him. Stanford wanted him. You know what I mean? Like schools that you would expect to come after him did. And he's a guy that really just took his time. I think he was going to go to Stanford if it wasn't for Notre Dame coming after him. And they made it official, I believe, on his official visit or right before they were offering. And he committed then. But that's a unique kid. And finally, Kaydon Finley. This is a kid that lives right down the road from Brayden Robinson. He committed on Friday, Devin on Saturday. Finley is unique. He's 6'1", 200, give or take, out of Aledo. They're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's another kid that's a legacy. His dad is Jermichael Finley, played at the University of Texas. And he's a kid that has the ability to make a lot of plays, not just with his feet, but with his head. He's very intelligent. When he plays against zone, I think he's even better than when he plays against man. And that's very rare for a high school receiver. It's debatable, but he's in that conversation. He finds the dead spots. He knows how to use his body. Strong kid. He's got pretty good speed, but most importantly, he makes the clutch catch. And to be honest, he is very much like a certain young receiver playing for the Irish in Mr. Greathouse. I think they're very similar. He could be a power slot, or you could put him outside, or you could do both. In the perfect world, he learns how to play that boundary spot, at least some. I don't think it would be ideal. I'd still rather have a 6'3", 215-pound kid there that's got real wide shoulders and is borderline a tight end, just to say. But why not? Depending on who you're playing, whether they've got a really good boundary corner, whether they want to play a lot of man zone, etc., he could match up there. And playing at Aledo, which is big-time football in the Metroplex, he'll probably adjust, much like Fitzgerald, quite well. I think Brayden will as well. Like all three of those kids played at areas that it matters. 2 in the Dallas area, 1 in Phoenix. They're going to transition to Notre Dame quite well. So that's going to be helpful. When we come back, we're going to talk about linemen and why Notre Dame is kind of setting a trend and showing how it's supposed to be done, short-term and long-term, to make college football playoff runs. That's next on the Portal Podcast. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes into play. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of the scrolling and looking for the best deal somewhere, let me give you an example of how Game Time works, because I've done it myself. You use your phone, you log into the app, you click on the little button to search, and you type in something, the name of a band, the name of a comedian, maybe it's a baseball game you want to go to, whatever it is. You click on that event, and then you can click on a seat, and you can see from your phone what it looks like at that venue. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. We're going to be doing some previews coming up here pretty soon. Teams, as we get done in about a week and a half with recruiting, it's going to be full-blown 2025 college football season. I'll give a recruiting spin for each team. Notre Dame, Michigan, Southern Cal, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida State, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, you name it. Who do they have coming in? Maybe a transfer or two to talk about, a few key recruits, concerns, possibilities at quarterback in my season projection for their win-loss record. So make sure you check that out on the Portal Podcast. And if you want to see videos of top recruits from Under Armour Future 50, Under Armour Camp, 7-on-7, and anything else, check out the Portal Podcast on YouTube. The Shorts page is full of them. I've even got some action from the Rivals 5-star camp. It's a lot of fun. So let's talk offensive, defensive line. Last year, Penn State, Notre Dame played, Texas and Ohio State played in the Final Four. What do they have in common besides being traditional blue bloods? O-line and D-line recruiting. Each year they go get good players, recruit, redshirt, develop. They'll sprinkle in good players. Don't get me wrong, they do. But for the most part, probably about 75, 80% of the kids that you saw trotting out on defense or offense were recruited out of the high school ranks to play at Texas, Notre Dame, etc., out of those four teams. Is that a coincidence? It is not. If you're going to win big time in college football, you must win big time recruiting battles from high school, period. Now, I know that this will probably tick off people that are Texas Tech fans or whatever. You might have a one-year hit where you get everything to go right. The best example of that I can think of ever is when Cam Newton went to Auburn. I saw him play live, that Auburn LSU game in 2010. I've never seen a better player live in college football. Insane. That's the exception. That should never be thrown into the algorithm. If you're going to win, come hell, come high water, you must sign elite high school linemen on both sides of the ball. End of story. This is not a calculation. This is just a data point, and that's the end of it. Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, and Ohio State were proof of it, and we're going to go into proof more right here with Notre Dame. They've got 6 offensive linemen in this class, and they have 4 defensive linemen, I believe, or they got 3. I forget which it is right now, but they got 3. They got a really good shot at Elijah Golden. He would be 4. That's what I'm thinking of. He decides July 26th, I believe. He is a defensive lineman down in Sarasota. But if you have 9 linemen in the bank already, you have some guys you're still looking at, and I'm sure Notre Dame's still talking to kids committed elsewhere, et cetera. That's the name of the game. That's a good sign. But what did you get? Like, did you get positions across the board? Did you get an interior guy that might be able to play center? Did you get a tackle that might be able to play the left side? Notre Dame did all of that. And that's the difference. Let me give you an example of what I mean by maybe that you could argue a lot of different ways in Notre Dame's class. You could argue that Grayson McHugh is the number 1 player long-term in this class in terms of upside NFL draft. Right now I'm looking at my iPad. Grayson is only a 3-star recruit by 24/7. He's a kid that's kind of grown into his body weight, kind of a Joe Alt type. I'm not saying he's Joe Alt, but they're ironically kids very similar in their background. Tight end, play tackle, that kind of thing. 6'6", 6'7", 260 pounds, give or take, going into their senior year of high school. Sound familiar? It is. That's the kind of kid that's very athletic. And by the way, I was so surprised by this. He did a backflip at 250 pounds not that long ago and put it on the social media app X. I retweeted it. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a kid that long and gangly that's still not filled out, looks so natural doing it. I've seen other kids complete it, and it was kind of awkward at that side, but not like that. That's the kind of kid that you get, and it changes your program because getting left tackles is hard. If you don't believe me, go ask any NFL scout, any NFL GM. That is the difference. If you go look at Texas, they had a big-time tackle getting ready to go to the draft. Notre Dame had Joel 2 years ago. They got some underclassmen that are tackle possibilities that are probably NFL guys. Penn State absolutely does. They put a few in the NFL recently. And, of course, Ohio State, their line is one of the reasons they beat Notre Dame and won the national title. They had guys that really played at a high level. They recruited. There is no shortcut there. And then defensively, like Notre Dame, their class, Tiki Hola won't get a lot of fanfare, but he's an interior guy that's a run stuffer. He can rush the passer a little bit, but he's mostly a power guy that's like 300 pounds out of Texas. That's the kind of guy that you have to get. Notre Dame doesn't normally get, and it makes a difference in whether or not you win games in what I call the 4-game player. What is a 4-game player? Well, the first 8 games on your schedule, if you're Notre Dame, Texas, USC, Michigan, about 8 games on your schedule. If you don't win by rolling out the ball, you probably had a really bad game, and the coach is going to take some flack. But those other 4, you need players that are difference makers, and it's not always about scoring the touchdown or making the tackle. You got to do your job against the elite players. Tiki Hola plays 100 mile an hour. He's very strong. He has the frame. He's about 6'3", 300 pounds, and he's a kid that just loves football. If you add that to what Notre Dame's recruiting on the edges, I mean, their DN class, I'll talk about that in a second, is awesome. If you add that to the edge class Notre Dame has, and you consistently get it, especially if the Irish do add Elijah Golden, I think it's Notre Dame or Alabama there. You're talking about Notre Dame took another step up in lineman recruiting. It's not quite what Texas, Georgia, Bama do consistently, especially Georgia, Texas. They're buying some D linemen there. But Notre Dame doesn't go that route. But they're still getting really good players, taking some ends, moving them inside, and they're doing it their way to fit their culture. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with getting Justice Terry like Texas did, and they flat bought him last year for way north of 7 figures. But you have to be able to develop kids and get kids like Tiki Hola every year. That has to be Notre Dame's objective now, and they're meeting it. And, of course, again, they got 3 at least really good interior offensive linemen in their class, maybe 4. It depends on who plays where. We'll see. But they got some versatility. 1 or 2 of them could probably play center if you needed them to. That's how you win in college football. I can talk about all the fun stuff with the skill players. Notre Dame's got a ton of them. I'm a big fan of Javion Osborne. I saw him at Rivals 5-star. Trust me, elite catching the ball. He's really athletic, smart, loves football, teammate. He's committed to faith and everything else around. He will be great at Notre Dame, but those are low-hanging fruit answers. For Javion Osborne to run through those holes, it's about the big guys. And I know football is different when you have guys in the trenches. And that's why when I actually go to a game, even when I'm scouting and on the field, I like to be in the end zone to watch vertically, just like all 22 films, so I can watch linemen. Does the quarterback see the field right? Does the running back come at the line too impatient, et cetera? How are the linemen working? You have to see it vertically. It's a little different. If I'm in the stands, I like to be in the end zone too. It's crazy. Some people might think that is, but you got to watch the linemen. So with that, when we come back, I want to talk about what would Notre Dame have to do to end up with the top class, and how does the next 4 or 5 months shape out before we get to December's National Signing Day. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. All right, everybody, this is the final part of the show talking about the chances for Notre Dame to end up with the top class. If I had to guess, I would say Bama, Georgia, Texas A&M, some of those schools might have a better chance because I don't think they care about running kids off quite as much. Let's just be honest. Not that Notre Dame won't tell a kid that he ain't going to play in hopes that he leaves. Some of those other schools will do it, so they'll go higher numbers. But Notre Dame still has a chance at the number 1 class. It's possible. I would say the best bets are going to finish number 3 to 5, which is pretty much where they are now. USC's in that book as well, but let's talk about one player that I've already mentioned. That is Elijah Golden. I haven't heard anything. He doesn't really do a lot of interviews, etc. I've known him for a few years. He was at IMG Academy. Now he's at Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota. He's been a wrestler over the last year or so. He dropped some weight. He was 255 from what he told me this spring when I saw him at Under Armour. But he's a really good athlete. Just has to learn the position and technique. Playing at Cardinal Mooney is probably not going to help him a lot. That's a smaller division of football down in Sarasota. Jared Clark, a former Notre Dame player, is the head coach there. I think that it's either Bama or Notre Dame. If it's somebody else, maybe Oklahoma. I'm not sure. I can't even remember his whole list, but that would complete the line class and give you the balance. You'd have 2 interior guys with him and Tiki Hola. You'd have Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer on the edge. That's a really good D line. It's only 4, like Michigan's D line class, SC's D line class. Those are bigger. They got similar talent and more of them. So I would lean that way for totality. But 1 through 4, Notre Dame would have about as good a group as anybody in the country. That's just not the way Notre Dame normally recruits. So that gives them a chance. That's number 1. They also have the opportunity to get a few other kids, and they also could flip some guys. I want to talk about that first before we go into who's left on the board, because this is something that I get asked in July and August all the time. Okay, we're short at this spot, whatever. It could be Syracuse, it could be Michigan, anybody. Recruiting fans ask me, what happens with flips during the season and all that? It's very simple. Follow the visits. If you are not getting kids to your campus, whether it's public or not, sometimes these things do happen under the radar, you are not going to sign them. And that includes in the fall. If you're trying to get a flip, it's possible to get a young man to flip, especially if he lives closer to your campus. But as most probably know, Notre Dame does not recruit that close to campus for the most part. And the ones that they do are usually decided by the middle of summer. Midwest kids decide a little earlier. Plus, you kind of either want to go to Notre Dame or you don't. The kids that live in the Midwest either really like Notre Dame or really hate Notre Dame, in my experience. It's even more so than other areas. But with that being stated, I think there's a good chance that Notre Dame will flip somebody we're not even talking about now, because that happens every year. If I had to lean, you said, Brian, what's the most likelihood? 0, 1, or 2 flips come to Notre Dame right now between now and signing day. I would say 2 is the most likely of those 3. And it's just because of the nature of the beast. However, there's going to be somebody in this group's going to decommit and go somewhere else. Lock, stock, and barrel. Why? Because it's 2025, and that's just the way it is. Somebody's going to get an NIL package somewhere else, and Mark's is going to say, see ya. That's just the nature of the beast as well. It is what it is. Now, for the other kid that's going to decide sometime here soon, I think it's July 11th, it's Nick Reddish, a safety out of Independence High School in Charlotte. And by the way, what's going on with Notre Dame recruiting the state of North Carolina as well as they have this year? It's really wild. Ebenezer Iwatade and Rodney Dunham, the 2 DNs, are elite. They get this kid, and you've got Thomas Davis Jr., the linebacker. Like, they're rolling in North Carolina. What's going on there, Mr. Belichick? They are not recruiting, by the way, anywhere near as well as I thought they would. But if they add Nick Reddish, they've already got a really good DB class. Kari Adams. I saw Joey O'Brien at Rivals 5-star, and he was tremendous at OT7 as well, from what I was told. I was not at the event. Notre Dame's class right now, like at secondary, the skill spots, it's already good. Reddish is a really good football player. He doesn't have necessarily this thing. Like, Kari Adams, to me, has the most skill upside of any of those kids. You could argue O'Brien, but whatever the case is, there's a lot of them. Reddish will be the guy that is going to be possibly a nickel, possibly a guy that ends up playing special teams for you really early. But to get him, Notre Dame is going to have to beat up Virginia Tech, where not 1, but 2 of his brothers went to Tech. That's tough. Well, either 1 or both are still there. I can't remember what it is, but that's not an easy hill to climb for Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish. We'll see what happens. But that's a really good group right now. But if you add another really good DB to that, it could be as good a DB class as there is in the nation. They've got a bunch of guys, and I could go through the whole list of recruits, but every corner they got every safety, every nickel possibility, every receiver, every running back, the tight end. Like they got Ian Premer recently. They killed it at the skill spots this year. For a combination of offense and defense skill spots, this is the best group Notre Dame assigned since the 90 class. And yes, that's the one that had Jerome Bettis in it. I'm not saying it's going to be like that. I had 5 first-round picks, if I remember correctly. I don't think it's going to be that good, but it's still one that is incredible. To that point, Notre Dame's trending in the right direction, and they were just in the national title game. If they finish this class with a couple flips, like I think, and they get at least one of the two between Golden and Reddish, it would almost be impossible not to finish in the top 5. Possibly number 1, depends on how everybody else does and which flips Notre Dame would get. Yeah, it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it that way. Again, I think they'll finish somewhere between 3 and 5, but this is the best Notre Dame class in very, very long time. And quite frankly, this is the best Notre Dame class to fit what they're trying to do on both sides of the ball. So hats off to everybody on Notre Dame's coaching staff, their back office, student body, everything, because it takes a village to get it done. And they bought in. Like they've adapted way better to the NIL game than I thought they would, to recruiting underclass. That's something I always used to like make fun of Notre Dame about. They were horrible at it forever. Not bad, horrible for a long time. Through the Willingham era, it's like they sucked at it. Charlie Weiss changed that, and it's gotten better since, but it still didn't hit where it needed to until Marcus took over as the head coach. And now they're rolling. The 27 class, for anybody asked, they're way out in front in terms of just interest. When I was at Under Armour Future 50, they did a really good job because so many guys, Stepp and all these different players, John Meredith and all these different guys, they've all got Notre Dame at least on their list. If they get them on campus, they're going to do really well. Watch out for Stepp and several other guys. I don't know which one they're going to get, but they're going to get another elite DB in the next class. Minimum, they'll get at least one more. By the way, Mike Mickens, best overall coach / recruiter in the country at the DB spot. With that, I thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the Portal Podcast. Please like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Share this podcast and comment down below, and give us a 5-star review on Apple or anywhere you download. This has been the Portal Podcast.